Hello, viewers, and welcome to the latest episode of The Huddle. Tim Poole here, editor of Gambling Insider, and I'm with Michael Bauer, CPO and CRO at Greentube. Michael, thanks for rejoining us.
Hello, happy to be here.
Yeah, always happy to have you on. Repeat guest, always a wealth of knowledge about the industry. Today we're going to talk about US, America, but we're going to talk about something specific, a deal for you guys. I'm going to let you tell us all about it from the top.
Okay. Yes, so we have some very positive news, recent news from the US market. We just entered two new states there in the last 2 weeks, which is Delaware and Pennsylvania. Let's first talk a bit about Delaware, I would say, where we've teamed up with Rush Street, who are the operator of Delaware Lottery. It was a really smooth process for us there. So from getting the license in Delaware until go live, it was just a few months. So it was really from all of the US states so far the most efficient one. Maybe also because we are getting used to it. But we could really use, for example, our service center in New Jersey. That helped a lot as well. And we have a long-standing partnership with Rush Street, so we could clarify a lot of things with them up front. Also, the regulator, I have to say, was very approachable, so really good market entry for us there. Pennsylvania, also happy about that launch. It's a bit the opposite to Delaware, because we worked really I think 2 years on this market entry, and now we are really finally there, and we are so happy about it because it took a long time and a lot of effort.
Sure. How does the strategy differ with between these two states for you, and also in comparison to kind of other states that you may have entered and probably maybe planning to enter in the future?
Yeah. I mean, let's start with Delaware, because it's a bit the odd one out, let's say. Here we have a situation that is, in principle, it's a monopolist. There's just one operator in the market. It's a situation that we have, for example, also in Canada with BCLC, or in Norway with Norsk Tipping, or in Austria even with Win Today. So we are used to that, and we like that situation as well, because we then can really work very closely with the partner and see what games do the players prefer there, and can be, can work on exclusives, bespoke games, and everything. So yes, I think a very, very interesting market for us there. From a strategic perspective, I think it's a bit different than any of the other US states, because there we have a broader customer base with the main three, let's say, FanDuel, DraftKings, BetMGM, dominating the market everywhere, and then we have a few others: Caesars, Hard Rock, Penn National, Rush Street, in a second row, let's say. And in these markets, it is really vital to work closely with the operators and make sure that we have really good launches, good positionings, work with exclusives, and so forth. And now, thank God, we can do that in Pennsylvania as well, because that helps in nationwide rollout of games, because sometimes, or for the operators, it is of course better to roll out the game simultaneously in more than one state. There is economies of scale in the whole marketing approach for us and for them. So yeah, that's mainly the difference.
Yeah, definitely want to ask you about Pennsylvania and talk more about that market. But Rush Street Interactive first, and it's interesting. You mentioned kind of, especially in iGaming, the big three there: FanDuel, DraftKings, and BetMGM. You've signed a number of partnerships with RSI, with Rush Street. How are you helping them? As you mentioned, there's kind of a tiers of operators in the US market. How are you helping them kind of compete and, I guess, challenge? It's tough to challenge those top three, but to improve and grow so that they can kind of compete with them.
Yeah, Rush Street is one of the few that also ventured out of the US, let's say, very early. They went also into Colombia and Mexico, I have to say I'm really impressed what they did there, especially in Colombia. They challenged the existing very strong retail-based operators, and it is really an impressive growth story that they had there. In Mexico, they are also increasing the business heavily. So also there, it's really quite impressive what they are doing, how they really achieved to gain market share in that market, which is really dominated by Caliente normally. So we will further support their growth, of course, in all markets, no matter if it's the US or Latin, because we see that they know what they are doing. And I think maybe they are not the biggest in the US, but for us, nevertheless, equally important because of this international growth story that they have.
Yeah, what I think might be interesting is as LATAM continues to grow, if operators and suppliers like yourselves and Rush Street can maybe take something that they've learned in the Latin American market and even use that helping in the US. Of course, there'll be differences between players and trends, but that might be something interesting as those markets develop.
Yes, could be. And let's not forget that there's a big Latin community also in the US. So there are learnings, of course, that can be transferred to the US market, especially on game preferences, I think, but also on how to address the target group. I would also assume that there are still a lot of LATAM players that are following LATAM news and get information from their home, let's say, home territories. So I guess it can be an advantage, yeah, to not forget about this big target group there.
Yeah. So Pennsylvania was a huge iGaming market up there, kind of with New Jersey as well.
Yeah.
In terms of how far the market can go, you mentioned a lot of work going into getting into the state, and that you're delighted to be there after that big build up. I imagine it's definitely going to be worth it for you. But in terms of, as you say, it's different to Delaware. Delaware, you said the odd one out. Pennsylvania, where are we looking at in terms of growth, and especially if more suppliers and games come into the casino market, the online casino market?
Yeah. Oh, I expect that growth will continue in PA. I think it is really on like similar size as New Jersey, Michigan, and can therefore, or is therefore for us an essential piece in the puzzle to gain market share in the US. There will be, I think, additional growth coming from more suppliers like us, but there will be more suppliers coming into the market. I think it has always been a bit slower than the other two, let's say, big states, because of stricter regulatory or more difficult, let's say, more difficult regulatory framework. But I expect that there will be more suppliers coming in, and therefore the offering will become bigger, and that normally leads to more growth. Having said that, let's not forget that PA has the highest tax rates when it comes to online casino. So this will maybe subdue a bit the growth, because of course if the big operators have to choose where to spend their marketing money, I would spend it in the other markets and not necessary or not as much. Or I would do the weighting for Pennsylvania. I would go a bit lower because of these super high taxes on slots.
Yeah, interesting note for sure. If we were to open up the discussion a little bit geographically and look at the US as a whole, not even necessarily geographically, but if I were to ask you for your thoughts on kind of how the US is developing as a whole, looking at these key markets, obviously when it comes to iGaming, there's still a lack of development in terms of new states. Nothing in New York and well, in general, nothing in kind of new states. But if you're looking at the US as a whole, and Greentube is looking at it, what are you kind of seeing and thinking in terms of trends and developments?
So for us, the US is still one of the biggest growth markets that we have, especially now with Pennsylvania and Delaware coming in. We will see a lot of growth. I expect in the midterm that the US will be, so with Pennsylvania, I think it will be our second biggest market, I guess. in the mid long run, I think it will be our biggest market overall. So for us, it's a very interesting and very good market. Then what when it comes to the market as a whole, the growth in general, of course, what would be needed is additional states. There was a bit of talk about iGaming regulation in Ohio. There was talk about it in Florida, New York, and a few others. So for the whole market to continue the growth, I think it would be really good to have one more state. For us, it's also from a timing perspective now good because now we have ticked off all of the big markets. There, we can focus on getting new licenses in new states because this, of course, also takes time, and we can't do everything at the same time anyway. But now, yeah, now we have capacity, let's say, and we're looking forward to more states opening up.
It would be nice if one of us could provide an exclusive here and say this state will be the next to legalize iGaming and it's going to happen next month. But yeah, it doesn't look like that's going to happen anytime soon. One thing we can talk about in terms of iGaming though, and well, even as I say iGaming, I'm wondering whether I should say iGaming, but looking at sweepstakes.
Yeah.
What's currently dominating headlines is kind of you've got prediction markets and you've got sweepstakes. Kind of bills passing and not passing every day almost. Last week we had Louisiana governor vetoed a bill banning sweepstakes, but in Connecticut it went through. Generally speaking, what's kind of Greentube's take on the sweepstakes? It's not a new boom; it's been around for a while, but the sweepstakes sector, and what is your stance on it?
We've discussed this for a long time internally, and initially we had the view that this is pretty much or is similar to social gaming, and we are a supplier in social gaming already, and we even have our own social gaming brands. So that was the initial view that we had on the topic. But then, as more time passed and more states came up with banning sweepstakes, or there was a lot of or several lawsuits coming in. Our opinion changed on the topic, and we have now decided that we will not supply to sweepstakes casinos because we have the opinion that it's not legal in a few states, and it's getting and the situation is also changing very fast. So if you onboard one sweepstakes casino, it can be banned in a specific state, in a very big state, and it becomes less lucrative. And in general, our take on regulated markets is very clear. We have always said we will only supply regulated markets, which sets us also apart from many of the other suppliers, and that I think is also something that the operators value, because they will get exclusivity basically on our games in the legal market. And that's our approach when it comes to sweepstakes. I know that a few markets still say, or it is still allowed in a few markets, but that might change soon. So it's not in our strategy to supply there.
Yeah, a few months ago, certainly around a year ago, especially heading into G2E, there was a lot of talk of sweepstakes, and we were asking the question: is it going to move towards perhaps being more legalized and regulated, or is it going to be outlawed and kind of banned? The evidence in the last few months obviously supports more that it's becoming illegal, and as you say, it's developed in a few states. But on its current trajectory, is that the way you generally? And again, we're being a bit speculative here, but is that generally the way we're seeing that it will go?
I don't know. I mean, I think if it is legalized, then it should be treated on a level playing field to the other iGaming market. I think that means paying taxes, for example, and I think that is also a view that is being shared with many of the big operators, like in the US. Because also their view is, if it's legal and if it's taxed, then nothing also speaks against it that they would go into this market. But they cannot afford to go into this market because of the legal uncertainty. So yeah, if it is a clear case, and if it's text and everything is, and there is a certain framework in place, of course it's good. Of course we would supply, and of course I guess also the big operators in the US would join the party. That's basically it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it would be interesting to see if there is a state out there that maybe bucks the trend and does that. I mean, I know there was a bill kind of in New Jersey.
Yes.
But yeah, certainly that would make them stand out. And when it comes to legislation, it's often difficult to be the first one to try something new and try something different.
I mean, in New Jersey, the question really is what does it provide? Is there an additional benefit for the already existing iGaming market? If it's being taxed on the same level, if it's the same product, from a games perspective, there's just the additional complications with the sweep coins. Is it really, attractive in New Jersey? I don't think so. I think it would be attractive in a state where there is no iGaming regulation yet. Like maybe as a first step, that would be attractive for everybody then.
Yeah, certainly makes sense. And we're gonna watch this space and kind of follow those developments as they come. But going back to Greentube and iGaming and regulated market, in terms of future plans, what's kind of next on the agenda? Because you mentioned that you're now in all the big markets, so there's not necessarily, until new states legalize, there's maybe not necessarily that fresh new ground to break into. But what does that mean for your kind of plans? Is it very much solidifying the existing product, looking for more partnerships in existing states? What's on the roadmap?
So in the US, it's very clear we need to now solidify our position, gain market share, roll out our games into the new markets that we have. Now, as I said before, we can create nationwide campaigns with the operators, so we can have a campaign that goes live in all of the states, which is a strong advantage. At the same time, we are now increasing our efforts in the marketing space, where we are going more into the B2B2C area, where we work together with influencers, with streamers, also in the US, in order to make our games more popular. Also, that is, of course, a big advantage to have all of the big states now available, because before we were missing a large target group. And so that's the US. In the other markets where we have just gone live, like Brazil, or this year gone live, like Brazil, like South Africa, we are basically doing the same. So the remaining 25 will be focused a lot on solidifying our market position, rolling out games, and working closely with the operators. For 26, maybe we start some new license applications already in the one or the other state. There are several options available, like United Emirates, for example, is an example that we are monitoring. Philippines is a market that we are monitoring. So yeah, we will for sure not stop, but we will prepare the next ones now, and then let's see where we will start next year.
Yeah, brilliant. Interesting to hear what could be on the hit list. And as you say, really interesting to see kind of the benefits that are unlocked by kind of the scale of having all of those states and working with the same operators across those states. That's very interesting and obviously very beneficial. But Michael, as always, thanks very much for your time. Really enjoyed having you on, and I'm sure the next time we speak, we'll be speaking about more deals. Again, whether they're in new iGaming states, let's see. Time will tell, but let's hope. Yeah. But yeah, thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks a lot for having me, and have a good day.